Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo, founder with Asheville Real Estate News. Really excited about what we're talking about today. We are joined by somebody with an organization here in town who's doing a lot of good work around the conversation of housing, but not just talking about it, also putting it into practice and providing real-time solutions for a lot of different options. So we're going to dig into that. If you're a landlord or if you're interested in housing here in the area, you're going to really enjoy this conversation. Before we get started, though, as always, do want to thank American IRA for sponsoring and being big supporters of this podcast. If you haven't checked them out or taken the time to visit their website, I'd encourage you to do so. If you're interested in doing anything with retirement funds, you will like the content that they have and the services they provide. But without further ado, Debbie, Alford, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I know I have to practice names sometimes off camera a little bit, but welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to talk about the work that Homeward Bound does with landlords and our clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we even dig into the Homeward Bound component of things,
of course.
Are you from Asheville? How did you get here?
Yeah, so I am not from Asheville. I feel like I'm in the majority when I say that. Most people that I meet are not from this area. I moved to Asheville almost 6 years ago, originally from Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay. Came up the mountain?
Yeah, just down the road. I was in Charlotte for about 10 years prior to moving here. I accepted a job with another nonprofit in town, working with middle schoolers and high schoolers, talking about social justice issues in Western North Carolina. So
that's good overlap then, right?
Yeah, so lots of conversations about homelessness and poverty and hunger and food insecurity and those kind of things prior to starting at Homeward Bound.
Okay. And before you even moved here, is that what you'd been doing in Greenville, Charlotte as well? Just kind of social justice?
Yeah, social justice work. I've had some case management experience working with sexually abused kids and substance abuse services years ago. And so I've always been driven to connect with the community on deeper issues and concerns.
Yeah, there's, it doesn't matter what community you're in, there's always that that need for sure.
Exactly.
So you started with Homeward Bound, right when you got here? Or 6 years ago, or how did that transition go?
Well, I've been with Homeward Bound for about 6 months now, actually.
Oh, 6 months. Oh.
Yeah, so I've been aware of Homeward. Yeah, I've been aware of Homeward Bound for the entire time. The nonprofit I worked with also put young people into service. And volunteer situations with different nonprofit partners in Asheville. And so Homeward Bound had been a longstanding partner of that agency. And so I was working closely with folks at Homeward Bound, talking about homelessness and housing first and all of those things.
Yeah, so, and then you decided opportunity rose up, you decided to move forward with it.
Yeah.
And why Homeward Bound?
Why not? No.
Well, I know that there's like a lot of good reasons to work with them and whatnot, but I'd love to hear from from the inside perspective. We just see it on the outside.
Yeah, well, Homeward Bound to me is doing some great work in this community, really getting involved with folks that are living outside and struggling with housing. And so before even starting at Homeward Bound, I really admired the work that the organization was doing in the community in terms of connecting with folks on a very real basis and a long-term solution that wasn't a Band-Aid, but more of a solution to the situation that we find ourselves in. And so I had that admiration and wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, can we dig into that a little bit? You're saying not the Band-Aid solution, which is one of the things that I've always enjoyed working with them as well, but what is the overall purpose or vision of Homeward Bound? What's the driving force, I guess?
Yeah, so Homeward Bound is all about housing people and housing folks right now that are the most vulnerable, folks defined as chronically homeless, folks that have been outside for a year or more or who have been homeless within 4 times in 3 years. And so folks that have been outside for a really long time, and I think for most of us that have lived in homes inside for our entire lives, it's really hard to understand maybe how a person gets there and relates to that. But Homeward Bound is doing that frontline work with people in those situations, meeting them, assessing needs, figuring out how they got there or what kind of led to this situation, and then how do we help a person live inside again, connect with landlords to make that happen.
Well, it's almost like a new skill set, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. You know, people have developed coping skills to live outside.
Right.
You know, they know how to survive when they're outside. They know how to like get their meals and where to go and how to, you know, manipulate the system, if you
Right.
will, in some cases. And so teaching folks new skills to be successful in housing is a huge part of what our case managers are doing.
No doubt. I know today we're gonna, wanted to dig in specifically on, landlord relations and whatnot. There's obviously a lot of, I don't know, stigmas or anything. Maybe that's not the right word, but just preconceived notions people have, again, with anything that's, vouchers or guaranteed housing through, government funds or private funds, et cetera.
Right.
But I know that's not all that Homeward Bound does, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole until we've kind of touched on everything else. So what are the other just programs, 30-second, just review quick so that anybody who's listening or watching can get a good kind of concept or of an understanding what else Homeward Bound does as well.
Right. So our clients are meeting our organization at A Hope Day Shelter, which is kind of the intake point for folks coming off the street. It's a place where people can get mail, take showers, store things, leave notes, get phone calls, all those services that we kind of take for granted on a daily basis. So that's kind of our intake point. We have several different programs that are working with folks experiencing homelessness. So we have our permanent supportive housing program that is working with people on long-term grants. So people in that program will receive Homeward Bound assistance for as long as they wish to be in the program.
Right, okay.
We have another program, Rapid Rehousing, that is seeking to house people as quickly as possible with short-term assistance. And so that includes our supportive services for veterans and families grant, which veterans will receive a specific amount of money and then have some time to some time frame to use that. And so a lot of that looks like rental assistance for a specific amount of time and
get
case
back
management.
on your feet, don't think about it while you iron out everything else.
Yes, exactly, and helps them overcome some boundaries, like if you, for instance, didn't have enough money saved to pay a security deposit, then Homeward Bound is able to step in with funds and help with that. And then we also have a prevention program which helps folks that are in housing that may be having some trouble paying rent or some other issue with a landlord, that our staff is able to kind of step in and mediate.
So if they're in housing, try to keep them in housing.
Right, to prevent them from becoming homeless so that we have to rehouse them. So those are kind of the major programs that we have. We're working with the city of Asheville Housing Authority to house folks, working a lot with private landlords and scattered site housing. So everything that we do kind of revolves around that end goal of getting folks into housing.
Let's talk about a crucial piece of that, right? It's the people who provide the housing. So private landlords, they're, we've talked about this before on the show, but wanted to kind of talk about it again because it's a really important topic and just hopefully go in depth. I don't know if you know the numbers. I don't know. Maybe catching you off guard here, but of the people of your clients that you all work with that are in housing, do you know what percentage of that is private, like just your normal landlord?
I would say
mom and pop landlord or whatever.
Right. I don't have like an exact percentage, but I will say that most of our tenants are in scattered site housing.
So scattered site housing
Scattered site means like private landlords that just have a unit or 2 units, maybe 5 or 6, just kind of depends.
They're not like mountain housing or something like that. They're not like a big...
Some of them are. Some of them are bigger apartment complexes, but it's basically everything besides like the housing authority.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we have about 150 people on any given night housed with folks that are private landlords. We have 69 landlords that we're working with, and we're always developing new landlord relationships. So this past year in 2018, we developed about 10 new relationships with landlords. And some of those, like I said, are folks that have 1 or 2 properties. Others might have 20. It just kind of depends on what a person is doing and how much they want to work with Homeward Bound.
What is that process from a landlord go to work with you all? Like, different organizations have different thresholds, different expectations. So what's the basic premise if somebody says, hey, like, I've got property for rent. I'd be interested in, potentially having the conversation with you. What sort of application process do they go through or vetting process?
So typically we find out about landlords when they're advertising their property on Craigslist or Trulia or Zillow or whatever. So we'll make that contact with the landlord, often meeting them at the property to see the property and talk about rent and those kind of things. It is very similar to what a landlord would do in terms of finding a tenant, right? So the landlord puts the property out there. We act as kind of a advocate for our clients. We go and meet landlords, talk about the property and what the application process is. So our clients also fill out applications for property, just like any other tenant would do. Homeward Bound is able to pay the application fees. And so a lot of that, is very typical of a landlord.
So the process is the same.
Yeah, process is very similar.
Essentially is if you all have a client that you all work with, likes the property, they go look at it, you all kind of hold their hand through that process, for lack of a better word, and then they like it, then what happens, right? So how does if you're working with people who've been homeless a lot, there could be some hesitation about housing them. What's done, or what are the things that you've seen to kind of overcome that hurdle? Right.
So some landlords are a bit tentative, right, to working with folks experiencing homelessness, because there's quite a bit of transition that comes with that. So that we're able to kind of offer some incentives. Many of our tenants, well, all of our clients receive assistance from Homeward Bound, and that is in the form of rent payments, and it goes straight to the landlord. So Homeward Bound's portion of rent goes straight to landlords. We can do that through direct deposit in many cases, so the money is easily accessible through the bank on the day that it's due, right? Which is always nice, not to have to collect checks. We offer a double security deposit as well, and every client has a case manager that they're working with.
Which, it's my favorite thing about it, honestly.
Of course,
It helps, right? There's that communication's always the first thing that goes wrong, and when you know that you can guarantee that you're going to be able to get in contact with somebody who's going to be able to quote unquote go to bat for you as a landlord, that's huge on our end.
Exactly, of course. And so from a landlord's perspective, if you're working with a regular tenant that maybe doesn't have Homeward Bound assistance, and someone doesn't pay rent, or they start having some problems in the neighborhood, you don't have anybody else to go to but the tenant. You've got to track them down. You've got to have those conversations and figure out what's going on. When a tenant has the support of Homeward Bound, landlords are able to call me, call me, and I get in contact with the case manager, and we engage in that conversation and kind of figure out what's going on or what the situation is. Maybe a client had a bump in the road with some debt they were trying to pay off, and rent was going to be a few days late. And so we're able to give that landlord the knowledge that rent is coming. We're assessing, getting the client there to pay their portion.
Yeah, information in those situations is always helpful.
Right.
So, absolutely.
Right.
I was, I don't know if are there anything else, because I did have, curious to know, like, success stories, like what sort of things are you seeing from people that you're working with? I've read the numbers before. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I know you guys have a pretty high success rate as far as achieving that vision of getting people into housing and staying in housing and moving through that.
So we've just recently housed our 2,000th person. And we have an 89% retention rate. And so folks that are housed, 89% of them are staying in that housing successfully. And a large part of that is due to not only the rental assistance, but the case management, that wraparound support. It is very hard, I think, for folks struggling with disabilities and maybe substance abuse and a whole variety of other things and are living outside. It is very hard to expect that person to kind of get themselves together before they go into housing. This housing first model helps wrap those services around a person once they're in housing to become more stable and successful.
The premise is, right, like if you're not worrying about where you're sleeping or what you're eating, then you can kind of worry on everything else a little easier.
Exactly. So once you've got a place to sleep, then you can lock the door at night. You're going to stay warm. You can kind of focus on some of those areas that need some help, like your mental health or your substance abuse or whatever it may be for a person.
I know you said you've been with Homeward Bound for about 6 months, right?
Exactly.
Have you had like a specific like aha moment, or just like where you're just like, wow, this is cool to be plugged into this program and doing what I'm doing? Or
all the time.
All the time?
All the time. Whenever we do a lease signing, it's that aha moment when a person is able to sit down with a landlord
walk away with keys,
and walk away from a situation with keys and a 1-year lease. Man, that's like
Yeah.
That's the whole reason that I started doing this.
What do you say to somebody who's still on the fence or hesitant about it?
Give it a try. Like, come talk to us and
Yeah.
let us explain our programs. You know, our tenants, our clients are just like regular tenants
Right.
with a little bit extra support from Homeward Bound, which can only mean good things.
Yeah, it's only a good thing.
Yeah. It kind of helps
Yeah.
just stabilize the whole situation.
Well, on that note, if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they do so, or what's the
Yeah.
process for them to
So
get more
I can
information, et cetera?
give you my email, and you can post that
Go
all
for it.
over
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. It's Debbie at homewardboundwnc.org. That is the best way to reach my team.
Okay.
Check an email all the time, and call in Landlords, and would love to work with folks that are watching this podcast and want to be involved in ending homelessness in Asheville and Buncombe County.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll just throw my 2 cents behind it. You know, I've worked with you all with Homeward Bound on and off, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years now, maybe even a little, probably about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
and it's always been a great experience
Good.
on the landlord side of things. And like I said, the case manager's component I think is really special and makes all the world of difference in our experiences. Because we've had tenants that haven't been great, just because that happens sometimes, but having the case manager has made a situation that otherwise would have been really frustrating, hard to handle.
Yeah.
It's been like, oh, okay, cool, straightforward, this is what we're doing, and it's been easy to remediate and kind of move forward. So
that's awesome to hear.
Thank you.
That's our goal.
On our side, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Debbie, thanks so much for joining us. Any closing thoughts for housing in general here in the Asheville area, and landlords, or anything that's on your heart that you just want to have a platform to say?
I would say that housing is a human right, and so join us as we seek to find the best housing for people and help us sign leases and keep people in housing.
Awesome. Well, Debbie, thank you so much. Appreciate it for joining us on the show.
It's great talking to you.
As well. All right, there you go. If you guys have any questions about housing, please reach out to Debbie. Visit Homeward Bound. Comment in the comments below. Share this with somebody. And we look forward to tuning into this conversation with everybody. And we'll see you all next week.